Just doing a slide check while you all take your seats. Okay. Does everyone who wants to sit down got a seat? That didn't make grammatical sense, but put your hands up if you want us to find you one. No. Good. We're all happy, fed and watered and ready for a good evening. So good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our first Silicon Brighton Leaders event of 2024. We're back. So a quick intro for those of you who don't know me. I'm Grace and I'm the co-founder of Silicon Brighton, but back to Silicon Brighton in a little bit. As you may see from the slide behind me and the person to my right, or your left, the programme has changed slightly from our original plan. So Kitty Horlock is unfortunately not feeling well. So we have an amazing replacement who is an absolute superstar and incredible in her own right, but has also been a bit of a hero and stepped in at 24 hours notice. So when she does come to the stage, let's give her an even bigger round of applause. But first of all, let's give a round of applause to the musicians for this evening. So we heard from Mia, who is a prolific singer-songwriter who was recently named City Sound's Young Artist of the Year. And then also Stan, whose last 4 tracks have been on BBC Introducing, and he sang on Live Lounge the other week. So we are amidst celebrities this evening, or future celebrities. And Mia and Stan are here tonight through BN1 Arts to promote their Keep Creative Arts Education Free campaign. So BN1 Arts is a creative arts school whose mission is to offer young people the best arts training in the UK, delivering a unique insight into the current trends and demands of the professional performance industry. And this is how you can help them. So while the role of the creative industry within society has never been clearer, arts education is facing a serious underfunding and lack of governmental support. The creative arts education is facing a critical challenge, and BN1 Arts believes that your involvement can make a significant difference. They're working with Sussex businesses across a range of mutually beneficial partnerships, and I'd love to speak to some of you about getting involved with the school. So we've got Helen, Rosie and Susie all here tonight. Give them a wave. And they're here all evening, so yeah, have a chat to them later if you'd like to be involved. My clicker is not working. Back a few. Sorry about this. There we go. On to Platform 9. They are our venue sponsor for this evening. So Platform 9 is an ever-expanding community of freelancers, creatives, and businesses in Brighton and Hove. They're renowned for their position as a co-working front-runner. They provide serviced office space as well as co-working across both of their locations, Brighton and Hove. You can speak to the bar team tonight about booking a free trial and a tour. You can follow them on socials and you can take one of the postcards. So plenty of ways to get involved and stuck into the co-working world. Next slide, please. So back to Silicon Brighton. So we're your hosts this evening, and I know that most of you in the room are long-time supporters of who we are and what we do. So apologies if this is repetition to anyone. I will try and make my intro quick. We are a community initiative with a mission to position Brighton and Hove on a global stage as one of the UK's tech hotspots. So when people think of starting a business or developing their career or looking to invest in the industry, then we want them to be considering this city. It's not about competing with other cities, but more about working together collectively to raise the profile of the industry as a whole in order to create an abundance of funding, an infinite talent of pipeline, and a plethora of space to work. And our part to play in this mission is working with the local tech and digital meetup scene. Next slide, please. We support over 30 tech and digital meetup groups across Brighton and Hove. These meetups are all run by volunteers. They're free to attend, hybrid and available for people at every level. We want these meetups to be as accessible as possible and to attract as diverse a mix of people as possible. We're supporting anywhere from 1 to sometimes 5 events every week across different tech verticals, themes and topics, and we help to deliver hundreds of events every year. These meetups upskill the community, they create meaningful introductions and engineer opportunities for collaboration across organisations. Next slide, please. Impact is hugely important to us, and we want the outcome of these meetups and the network of businesses that we've brought together to not only foster connections, but also to drive real change. We know that the industry has a long way to go in terms of being truly diverse. So if we can spotlight role models, bring in different speakers, and proactively promote our events to a variety of other networks, then we'll naturally build a more diverse community. And on that note, part of our strategy is also about creating meaningful partnerships with iconic events, initiatives, and institutions in Brighton. Because a successful tech cluster doesn't just mean top talent and expansive office space. It's about the entire destination marketing of Brighton and Sussex as a whole to show off our city and region as one of the greatest places to live as well as work. And speaking of tech clusters, we've been working with the local council, a number of digital businesses, Brighton Chamber and the universities to refresh the Brighton and Hove tech cluster in order to break down siloed ways of working and pitch the city and the region as a united voice. So how can you get involved and contribute to our mission? So our overarching goal is to become a financially self-sustaining community in order to ensure that the work that we do can continue, and we are in pursuit of funding and support at the moment. We launched our supporter offering at the beginning of last year, and we now have a whole host of businesses who contribute to us financially on a monthly basis towards our running costs. So a massive shout out, put your hands together again, there'll be a few of this, because here they all are on the big screen. You have genuinely been in it from the beginning, so a massive, massive thank you. Oh, sorry. And there's also now the option to subscribe as an individual, paying a one-off donation or £5 a month. And then we launched our sponsorship offering before the end of last year, targeting businesses at a local, national and global level, looking to build or scale their presence in the South East for new employees or clients, or building out their CSR strategy. And I'm thrilled to announce that we do have a couple of sponsors on board. So first of all, a huge shout out to the University of Sussex Business School. We're going to hear now from Marcus Atkinson, the Business School's External Engagement Manager, to tell us a little bit more about the work they're doing and how this partnership matters.
Thank you very much, Grace. I'm going to keep this as short as possible. This is the first time I've come to one of these events, and it's amazing to be here, and we're really pleased that we can partner with Silicon Brighton to bring some of our academics here as well. And so the University of Sussex Business School and Silicon Brighton, but we're also partnering with the British Academy, which is, you'll be hearing from one of my academic colleagues who's funded by the British Academy. So there's another sponsor organisation in the background. I just wanted to, I'm sure you're all aware of the University of Sussex Business School. I just wanted to say a few words about it. It's been there for 12 years now as a business school, but its history goes back 60 years. It was formed from two units. One unit actually is particularly relevant for this evening's topic, and it was formed in 1966, and its mission was to look at the impact of science and technology on society and people, and that's precisely where we are tonight. So it's nice to see this whole theme that's still going on up at the university. There is lots that I could tell you about the school. It's the biggest research school, business school in the UK at the moment. After 10 years, 12 years, that's a phenomenal achievement. There are amazing people up there and amazing students. There are ways to connect. My contact details are up there if you scan the QR code. I work between the business school and businesses on various projects, and there are various formal and informal ways that we can work together. I won't explain it all now, but I'm quite happy to talk to anybody who'd like to find out more. A really good way to find out what we're doing, there's the research review. I would definitely go and have a look at it. And if you're here tonight for this particular topic that we're looking at, NFTs and so on, turn to page 13 and you'll find a whole section about it there. So please do that. So that's it from the Sussex Business School. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marcus. And on to our second sponsor. I am delighted to announce that Octopus Energy Group have also come on board. They are not here this evening, but I'm going to just rattle through a little bit about Octopus. They are a global energy tech pioneer launched in 2016 to use technology to unlock a customer-focused and affordable green energy revolution. With operations in 18 countries, Octopus Energy Group has a truly global reach. Their domestic energy arms have 7.7 million customers with cheaper, greener power. Octopus Electric Vehicles is helping make clean transport cheaper and easier, and Octopus Energy Services is bringing smart products to thousands of homes. Octopus Energy Generation is one of Europe's largest investors in renewable energy, managing nearly a 6 billion portfolio of renewable energy assets across the globe. So massive, massive thanks to Octopus as well. Keep that slide up while you give a cheer. And then when we launched our sponsorship offering, we promised to give our top spot to a charity offering one not-for-profit pro bono support to help elevate their brands across our network. And I'm excited to announce, which I sort of ruined with the previous slide. Can you guess who it is? It's actually Code Bar, our chosen charity. And we've got Julia Lukes here, who is a junior WordPress developer, Code Bar organizer, but also ex-student of the charity. Tell us a little bit more about them.
Thank you. Hello, thank you, Grace. I'm very honored to be here and actually to be speaking on behalf of Code Bar. So thank you so much for having us and for partnering with us. It's really exciting. I think quite a few of you already know what we do, and I'm really excited to say I see a lot of familiar faces from companies that already work with us. But just in case you don't know about Code Bar, we organize free coding workshops across Brighton for underrepresented groups in tech. I'm a direct beneficiary of this experience, and I feel really, really lucky to have gotten through basically a tough career switch. I'm actually a violinist and I still play professionally, but I chose to kind of pursue something that was perhaps a bit more stable. Maybe some might say the tech industry isn't as stable as it was in the lockdown times, but we can talk about that later. But Code Bar is an incredibly important part of the community in Brighton, and it's because of the hosts and sponsors that help kind of work to make our workshops possible. So we're really grateful to all of the hosts and sponsors. So we're also celebrating our 10th birthday this summer, which is very exciting. So it's been a long time of building a community. And basically, I'd just like to say, if anybody wants to find out more about what Code Bar does, we are here. Nigel in the front as well is very happy to answer questions. So if you are a host, a potential host or potential sponsor, please do get in touch with us. We're also really pushing to get more students. So if you know people that are looking to learn to code, or maybe working on personal projects and would benefit from an experience where they're working one-to-one with mentors and just in a really safe and positive environment, please do pass them on to our website, codebar.io. We also have scattered a few flyers around on the chairs as well. So thank you, Grace, and thank you for having us tonight. It's really exciting, and I hope to speak to you more a little bit later.
Thank you. And thank you to Julia. And we've talked quite a bit about financial contribution, but it's absolutely not all about that. These events are a celebration of and a thanks to all of our supporters and sponsors, but also the meetup organisers and the volunteers. So the people that give their time up for free week on week to deliver an absolutely stellar lineup of tech events. But we still have a long way to go. So we're always on the lookout for anyone to get involved. So if you're not and you want to in any capacity, then always come and grab me and we'll make some good stuff happen. And now on to the main event. So this evening's keynote is building an enabled tech app to democratize the access to mentorship, networking and conversations for women in the professional world. She's an award-winning entrepreneur of an inclusion consultancy, TEDx speaker and author. She has hosted main stages at Web Summit, CogX, and The Economist, leading conversations around Web3, the future of work and connectivity. Please welcome to the stage, again at 24 hours notice, our superhero, Sonia Barlow.
Thank you so much. I love the fact that we can do this in 24 hours, but it's just, I always say that if the Zoom meeting doesn't work or if the meeting's not going to plan, then that's tech for you. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you. Thank you. I have to say that the way that I like to deliver is kind of more off the cuff. And of course, the slides that I sent might be a little bit disrupted because I made them on Canva and then we moved them to Google Slides, but don't you worry about that. Today, I want to talk about welcoming ourselves into the future. Fundamentally, I had no idea that we would be here, right? As I think most of us didn't. I was reflecting back on what I wanted to discuss, and it made me think of the time when, I don't know about you all, but when I started first using any kind of internet, there was a setting on it from AOL that you couldn't use it for more than an hour. Do you remember that? And my parents loved it up. They were like, the clock is going and that's it. Now you're trying to get them off, right? My parents included. I'm like, why are you always WhatsApping? Like, who are your friends? Who are you talking to? I was also thinking about the fact that today everything's on the cloud. It's really easy for us to exchange information and, work from anywhere. We're obviously in a co-working space. 12 years ago when I was at university, I remember having to go back to my university to work on the encrypted information that was there, go through the library books to really go through the Harvard Review and make sure that my USB made sense in terms of verification before we then took it home. And so I guess the point we're trying to make is we've come a really long way. And so I'm not here to kind of bore you into what does the future look like? Is it going to be spooky? But I'm really here to give you more practical advice as to what we can do and why we should not only care about the future of tech and the future of innovation, but most importantly, how we can make sure it's inclusive so that each of your problems here are actually solved. Because otherwise, it's a waste of everyone's time. And so for that reason, I'm going to ask you to take your phones out, if that's okay. And there's a code just on the top there. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't, it's slido.com, #Web3. And I'd love to know, the first thing is, where are your energy levels right now? So 1 is, I'd rather be asleep, and that's fair because it's anonymous, right? So you're all good. And 5 is, I'm ready for this discussion and I probably had too much caffeine. It's good to know where we're starting from so that we know where we're going, ultimately. So if that doesn't work, it's slido.com, #Web3. You just type it in. It's an anonymous tool if you haven't used it before. It's just to make things interactive. And in the Q&A, if you just start posting your numbers, 1, rather be asleep. Maybe you got dragged here. Let's be honest about it. It's completely fine. 5 is completely on the caffeine. Does that work? 4, 3, 5. Wow. There are bigger numbers than I thought. Thank you so much. 3, E. I'm going to say that might be a 3. Does that work for everyone? Can you raise your hand if it doesn't work for you? The question is, where's your energy levels? Yours might be a 2. just based on that response. What's your energy level? 1 is rather be asleep. 5 is you're completely buzzing and you're ready to be here. I need to know where people are before we really kick off. #Web3. So don't double hashtag, it's just Web3. It's good, don't worry. Try to make it as easy as possible. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this, right? 1 is if you haven't used Slido before, it's an anonymous interactive tool. And so not everyone is comfortable raising their hands and asking questions, and not everybody wants to shout something out. So if you have any questions free-flowing throughout, feel free to put them in the Slido. Please don't use your name to keep it anonymous for that reason. And then I will be checking that throughout. The other thing is that I'm really aware of people's short attention spans. And so I'm not talking at you for the next 40 minutes. I want this to be a discussion, right? And we can make this discussion go anywhere you want, because I think that's the whole point of what we're talking about. We are the future. We are creating the future. And ultimately, by creating the future, it means we have to disrupt a few things. Of course, that doesn't come up, but let me tell you who I am, so that's fine. But if you want to connect with me to find out, the QR code is there. So I graduated in 2015 and fell into the world of tech. I truly mean I fell into it because it was the first job offer that came my way. And as a fresh grad, I took it, right? I wasn't trying to be jobless or unemployed. And my parents said, once you've got a degree, you've absolutely made it. That's what I believed, at least. Once I started the world of tech, I worked for insights and analytics and fundamentally cookie data. I was understanding what your purchasing behavior was and then sending you coupons through the door, magazine placements, and, you know, tracing you down on the internet so I could make sure that you come and buy at my shop, which I think is ironic now, a few years later, that we're talking about decentralization and the concept of taking ownership of your data, when at that point, there were 20 million of you and I knew what you were doing. I used to work for Tesco Clubcard, right? I was that person that was dropping you coupons to be like, you haven't had Nutella in a while, it's 50p off, come back to us. That was me. I then went and worked at a couple of fintech consultancies that were great. They were okay, actually. But ultimately, I was solving challenges in real time, how to digitally transform, how to ensure we all speak to each other, what good looks like. I worked for one of the largest banks in the country, and I kid you not, none of their systems spoke to each other. Right? You're all laughing, you're all nodding. You're like, that group knows what I'm talking about. I love that. You know, right? I found it boggled my brain. I was like, wait, so if I have to buy a mortgage and I want to take out a credit card, you don't know if I've got a mortgage and I've got a credit card. They're like, no, the systems don't speak to each other. I'm like, then what do you do? Like, why do you exist? How do businesses run without the efficiencies? That's a whole different question in itself. In 2018, I found myself quite lonely, and I don't know about you, but it's lonely going into the world of work and then not really having a set of friends or a network or just information that you should make available. And then you also don't want to talk to your managers about them, right? You want to go out of that space to be like, I'm not having a great time, so what do I do about life? So I started a brunch club, liked avocado and toast, you like avocado and toast, I thought there was a vibe. First 3 brunches, nobody came. But I was already lost and lonely, and I had no social media, and I had no network, and I had really honestly no friends. I kid you not, this is on the internet, like I'm actively always looking for friends. And so I carried on. Long story short, at the end of 2019, I lost my job. And that's probably the best thing to happen to me. Obviously, in that moment, it doesn't seem like it. And I'm grateful that a few of you have actually met in our past lives, and you've also lost your job. Good for you, right? Because actually, to some extent, it's the best thing to happen to you if you know how to make the most of it. In other ways, I'm not talking about the financial disparity, of course, that's there, and the sickness is there, but sometimes the universe will push you to do things that you don't want to do yourself. And so in 2020, I jumped on social media and I started a consultancy. Long story short, in 3 years, I have over 100 client projects to support companies in being more inclusive and upskill 20,000 people all for free with a 90% success rate. We cover 24 countries. We have a best-selling book. In 2021, I got my own radio show on the BBC. And in 2022, it's named as best radio show in the country. Outside of that, in 2022, I was named as Entrepreneur of the Year and had my own blazer in store by this luxury brand called Bash. And in 2023, I decided to pause everything I was doing because you were just getting into the whirlwind of scaling a business that you started as a brunch club, right? So you see where this went. I was like, wait, this trajectory went way too fast for me. So in 2023, I thought, what are some skills that I really want to work on? You know what I want to do? I want to go into travel. And so that's what I did. I spent 2023 traveling, writing about it, and interviewing great leaders on my travels. So I've interviewed 60 people last year independently, including footballers, and most recently the Royal Princess of Saudi, which comes out in a couple of weeks. And so I am that intersect between innovation, tech, and travel. And the app, well, actually, that goes back to our first point. So we're democratizing access to mentorship, career conversations, and networking. Ultimately, it's like if LinkedIn and Bumble had a baby, that would be me. Thank you. This is market research. That's what I mean. If I get enough laughs, I'm like, yeah, it works. But then someone will be there being like, so you're making lesbian dating app? I'm like, no, but it's good that that's what you think, right? So free market research. But ultimately, we're trying to make sure that you can find your friends, build your network, and have career conversations wherever you are. Why? Because there's not a lot of systems in place to do that. Most recently, I found out that I have ADHD and chronic migraines, which is no surprise to my family, but that's something I've been navigating through. So as we kick off and carry on, I would just like to say that if I start to digress, please feel free to put your hand up and bring me back. If I start to make up words, please do the same. And if you feel like you're not taking something away from today, put your hand up and let's talk about that. The whole point of the way that I like to deliver is I need to make sure that you leave with at least one new thing today, or there's a value add. Otherwise, it's a waste of your time. And we're not trying to have that, right? You could be doing better things on your Thursday evening, but you chose to be here. So let's make sure that it's really worth the time and the consideration. Hence, we have the Slido, we have some questions, and we have different various points that we can get into. So what I really want to cover today is not just where we are with Web3 and where we're going. I want to talk about some really cool case studies that do exist that most of you may know, but some of you are like, oh my God, that's great, that's interesting. I want to talk about some challenges that are coming up in the world of tech generally and how we can solve them. And then most importantly, I want to end with not just what you can do in your working spaces, but also what you can do for your brand. Because as a TED speaker, I love listening to other TED Talks. And I went on TED Talks yesterday, and there are less than 90 TED Talks in the Web3 space. So if anyone is thinking about what the next 5 years for them looks like, get into Web3 and go do a TED Talk, mate. Because there is dire need for that representation in spaces where we don't exist. And so on that note, I'd love to know, with a show of hands, how many of you here have a business in the Web3 space? Cool, like 10%, great. Easier for me then, I don't have to go into that depth. How many of you have no idea what Web3 is? Little idea to no idea what Web3 is. How many of you were told to come here, dragged here, or falsely here because you're going for dinner afterwards? That's fine, I love that. No, it's good to be honest. How many here actually run a business? Cool, and how many here are in corporate, but on a side note, they would like to not be in corporate, but they can only put their hand up here because the camera's looking. It's okay, we'll talk afterwards. I love that for you. I love that. I love your hand just went straight up. There's a bunch of people here that can make that happen. And so this is literally the style, right? We're having a bit of fun. I've had 24 hours, but this is what I love to do for a living. So I'd love to get your Slidos back out. And this is where our word cloud comes in. And please don't worry about the font or what it looks like on the screens. It's when you reformat things around. So what was the first question? Web3 is. So what you're going to do is you should see on your side a question. You can put whatever you want into it, and it will come up as a cloud. Except we can see what Charlie's doing because he is sharing the screen. So Web3 is coming. Thank you so much. Is it coming or is it here? Internet on acid. Those are the festival goers in the room. Overhyped. Can we zoom in a little bit? Is that cool? Thank you. Blockchain gaming for me, mysterious, everywhere, unclear, trusted, floating at limbo. Fun fact, because I was doing a lot of research, there are less than 500 businesses that are in the Web3 space in the UK and US alone, which means that there is a massive opportunity out there. And the current market is around 28 billion. So think about all that money that we are sleeping on at this point. What happens to target market, underdefined, immersion, whatever marketing wants it to be? Oh, we've got a Jack Dorsey in the room. Where are they? If you don't know that reference, really simply, Web3 is, and our academic here, Maria, is actually going to share this with us. Either you like it or you don't like it. Either you get it or you don't get it. So the Elon Musk and the Jack Dorseys in the room have kind of said, look, Web3 is fake and it's false and it's just marketing on acid. individuals who are building businesses have said, no, there's something really, really great here, and we'll be able to solve the problems of the solution by decentralizing, which basically means that you can own what is yours. Who here uses Facebook? Who here has a Facebook account? Who here uses WhatsApp? We're all screwed. The point is that Mark has too much of our data and we can't do anything with it. At no point were we told, hey, give us your data and then we're never going to give it back to you and then we're going to sell it on to someone else. Web3 is solving that issue. Ultimately, it's saying your data is yours and what you choose to do with it, you can do. Interestingly, who has heard of Temu? Yeah? Who has sent their family and friends that link where you get £5 or £10 if they subscribe to Temu? Some of us, yeah? Love that. Recently, not recently, this is just yesterday actually, I don't know why I keep saying recently, there was an article that came out to say, please check the T's and C's on Temu, because what you've done is you've not only subscribed them, but you've signed up in the T's and C's where Temu apparently can use your data for whatever they want. Kind of looking at you here, right? Because you put your hand up. The point is that we're so quick to say yes to things because who is a legal assistant and who's going to go through all the terms and conditions that we have no idea where anything of ours now is. We have no idea where our data is being used. We have no idea how companies are using it. And yet we're very confident in, yeah, I'll click subscribe because I want the Wi-Fi of this place. What are they doing with the data that you're building and you're taking out? And in simple terms, that's how I like to think of Web3 is you're taking ownership of what's rightfully yours. You, your habits, your activities, and yourself. But the argument comes that can Web3 ever actually be true? So overhyped, trusted. I think those are juxtapositions, and yet we are everywhere on blockchain. Do you mind jumping back onto the slides? Is that okay? I don't know if any of my slides are actually going to work because some of the writing is in white, so that doesn't help anybody, does it? I will read it from here, don't you worry. So, according to Gartner, Web3 is intended to give any participant on their web their own autonomous power and control. According to Ethereum, Web3 gives you the ownership of your digital assets in an unprecedented way. And according to McKinsey, Web3 doesn't ask users to trust one another. Instead, the technology is designed so that a transaction goes through only if specific criteria are met and data is verified. Those are the well-known definitions, and that's where we are. But I also like to think of the fact that Web3 are the changes that are coming up and how we're taking ownership of that, right? Like we mentioned, today we have the cloud. 10 years ago, that was nothing but an idea. Right now, you can use Web3, you can use the crypto that the blockchain is built on blockchain to pay for stuff, whereas before it was all cash in hand. And then Web3 is just being interconnected and yet, to some extent, being disconnected. And that goes back to that point of loneliness. It's like we're all connected in some way, but then we own what we have. And so is it ever truly going to be real? So I don't ever want to stand here and just have one side of the argument, right? I'm a journalist at heart. And so there's always a bias and a pendulum that swings. And ultimately, why we talk about this and why we want it to be an exercise around inclusion is we need to bear in mind where we are and where we're going. And so how are we fundamentally building the solutions that actually serve us? And often we are not. I don't know if any of these slides are going to work, so we should have checked the colors beforehand, but it's okay. So back on Slido, Web3 isn't. And then what I'll do is I will kind of bump the slides and just read off my phone and then have a chat with you all. So just to make sure that we can go through it as once. Web3 isn't coming. It's already here. I'm glad that that is what you've learned actually in the last 2 minutes. I like that. Corporately owned. Is it though? Anybody want to shout out their thoughts? Anyone mad at Web3? Freedom, fulfilling a compelling business need, dangerous, clear on acid. We need to talk about this, the acid part. Controlling, a pushover. convincing. Sounds like to me that we have some skeptics in the room. And I think for our next panel that's coming up, this is a great discussion, because ultimately that's what we're going to talk about, is deep dive into what it is and what it isn't. It is clear. Why is that such a big word? That's not what I would have thought you would have said. But it sounds like it is. Just for crypto dudes. Well, I think because our slides are playing up a little bit, I'm just going to share some stats with you that might be of interest. The highest searched popularity of the term Web3 is in China. 5% of crypto entrepreneurs are female. The total valuation of the metaverse by 2030, does anybody want to guess? 100? 100 what? Trillion. Oh, big number. Anyone else? Do you know the market we're playing in? It's good. It's a good guess. Trillion is just a made-up number anyway. 678 billion by 2023. And there's 195,000 monthly searches of Web3 on Google. Do you mind jumping back to the slides? Let's see if these work. Cool. There's some really cool use cases, though, when it comes to Web3. So I had the opportunity to test out this new travel platform called dTravel. It's like the Web3 of Airbnb. It's peer-to-peer rentals with travel tokens. And ultimately what it means is that you can use your tokens, your travel tokens, your money that is sitting in this outer space universe to pay for you booking these resorts, these hotels, these residencies, but then you don't have to pay for service charge. It's a great question. Does anybody want to jump in? Because by all means, I don't want to lecture anyone here, and I feel like we could have a great discussion. What is a common currency of Web3? Why are you going to say sorry? This is what we're here for.
So unless you're using the Lightning Network on Bitcoin, it's really difficult to transact, but not everyone understands the Lightning Network. That might be a little bit technical. So more common currencies are, for example, Solana and also Ethereum. But recently, because so many people jumped on Ethereum, gas prices went up. Gas prices is essentially how much you pay for other people to validate your transaction. Before, in the past, we'd rely on banks to do that, whereas now we're relying on computers and smart contracts which are in place.
We'll get you on the panel if we have time, actually. That's a great response. Thank you. Very simply, it will shift and change depending on, one, the trust in the market, two, depending on how much it costs to actually create and validate the blockchain, which is the center it sits on, because ultimately what Web3 is that we're validating it through the systems versus the systems validating it for us, like you've mentioned. And most importantly, it really just builds on what already does exist. Now, Ethereum is always going to be the mega star, let's say, and that's because Ethereum is also, just so you're aware, the founder of Ethereum is who coined Web3. That's a great question. If you have any more questions, reach out. Right? This is what I want this to be, like, interactive and fun and actually educational. I would say with dTravel, they were in their pilot stage and it took a few hours to book something, whereas like an Airbnb would have taken 10 minutes, right? But you were in a position where you were using the currencies that you've accumulated through various crypto apps. It was a validated experience, and so there was trust in the system, and you weren't paying for service charge, but you were paying for the energy that it cost somewhere in some country for us to create the coins. And so that we can debate all day. The second one is Gucci. Now, Gucci have really jumped on this Web3 thing. They have a really cool NFT art collection. Very simply, and there's a great TED talk on this that I can share with you all afterwards, the idea of the NFT is Let me put it this way, because that's what they said. If you take a picture and you send somebody the picture, how do you know who has the original? So anyone can put anything online and say, I've taken this, I've created this, this is mine. NFTs take that risk out of it. So there has to be a line of ownership. So if I take a picture and I send it to everyone in this room, ultimately it can always be traced back to me. And so Gucci have created an art collection of NFTs, one that they've bought and created themselves, so they have the ownership. But then you've got Gucci handbags, Fendi handbags, and all these NFTs that are in the virtual world going for more money than the real thing in real life. And the last one is there's a clothing and shoe brand called Charles & Keith in Singapore. I'm not sure if you all have heard of it, but it's very cool. I didn't know this, but they actually let you pay using cryptocurrency. So you don't have to run away to Portugal. That's the tax haven for cryptocurrency, by the way. You can go to Charles & Keith and spend all your money there. I think what's more interesting, and this is maybe for the finance people at the back, is they've been able to establish that very quickly, right? Given what we know about the world. And so those are three very cool use cases that I think if you wanted to further learn about the innovation and technology that's coming through, you could most definitely go and research those. Can you go down to the next slide? Oh, I can do that. Now I'm going to bring out some of the biases. Up, that one, that's fine. Who has heard of Levi's using AI models? No? Okay, well, this is a little bit of another expose, but Levi's, about a few months ago, used AI models in their adverts and marketing instead of using real people. Because, and I paraphrase, there wasn't enough diverse people to begin with, and so they wanted to make sure that they were truly represented. That is a consequence of the Web3 space, because now you're using artificial intelligence to create images, systems, products, people, videos that don't exist, and you're putting it out there. What does that mean? Yes, it's great for the representation, if the representation, the data isn't biased to begin with, but what about real people who are all sitting here who would love to be a Levi's model, right? You'd love it if they came to you and you're like, you look like a typical person, you could be the face of Levi's. The second one here is ChatGPT. Who thinks AI is cheating? I love the academic in the room is like, yes, yes, because all my students have used it. Absolutely, there's a level of that. You're like this because you have an AI company? Okay. No, it's not AI, absolutely. But the idea being that you can generate prompts based on what is available widely, data-wise. And of course, you know it's not AI from a technicality standpoint, but the general public don't have that level of educational knowledge, and that's the other problem that exists. Outside of energy and expense, I love that, yes, that was very powerful. It's out of energy and expense, which we spoke about earlier. It's the lack of education. It's the fact that we are prompting and throwing around these buzzwords, thinking that the other person should know what it means, but actually we don't. I don't know about you, but every auntie and uncle I knew when Bitcoin and crypto were making the money a few years ago, jumped and invested and then lost all their money. Why? Because we don't have a lack of education, but we have a lot of unregulated marketing and information out there that's making it really easy to meet a customer, but actually not educate them on what good looks like. ChatGPT definitely isn't cheating, but I've spoken to a lot of academics and a lot of students are using it in their everyday lives. And so going back to one of the first comments I made, 15 years ago, I had to go to a library to learn how to Harvard reference and pick up references. Now, you go and ChatGPT and you go, can you summarize this very long paper that someone has spent a lot of their time and life on into 3 points so I can then use it? And it still sounds like a robot. I had a personal assistant last year who, I kid you not, was using ChatGPT to do the work, but billing me for about 3 days worth of work when the output was very ChatGPT-like. So it's false, and there's a level of information. And going back to your gas fees, thank you for sharing that. There is also the energy and the cost of creating this network. electricity is really expensive. And so you've got to think about who's actually funding all of this in the background. My other Slido question for you, ChatGPT, Web3 will. So if your phones are out, perfect. If not, don't worry, you can just shout out, let me know. What will Web3 do? Do you want to flip it to the Slido, if that's okay? Thank you. Have you put it in the cloud, though, is it? Oh, no. Well, we'll add that. Democratize information. I love that anybody else's phone did and you want to shout out. Can I ask, what do you mean by that? Can I ask, when you say democratize information, what do you mean by that? It's kind of big words, right? Like, what does democratizing information mean? Making it more accessible for starters.
And it's like with your ChatGPT example, you ignored the many different ways it can help people with disabilities express themselves, perform professionally. And like the referencing example, you mentioned you have ADHD. The difficulty of ADHD in forms is really very real. Adding tools to make that more accessible, boosting creativity. Tech has been used as this gargantuan boogeyman for so long that side of things has been ignored.
I love that. And I would say I haven't ignored it, but you've definitely beat me to it. So thank you so much. But that's ultimately where that accessibility, inclusion, diversity angle comes in. Is there's one angle which is, well, actually, we don't know how to use it. There's the other that we all should learn how to use it because it could make our lives easier. It could make referencing easier. It could make accessibility easier. It could make people who are dyslexic easier for them to write, communicate. It could make individuals who, like myself, have ADHD, from a prompts perspective, it's making admin tasks easier, but on one hand, you're losing jobs, on another, you're making them. But going back to your point of accessibility, and we'll touch on that as well, a lot of it is the information that we input. Now, if the information we input is already not clean and is not representative, then we're creating output that doesn't really serve us as a world, but serves the same or similar person all over again. And eventually, obviously, I'm top lining here, right? There will be vertical debates. There will be deep dives. I'm not here for that. I'm kind of here to set the scene in 24 hours. So the panel can go into that level of information. So Web3 will make some crypto dudes a lot of money. Why just dudes, though? I told you there's a massive market and there's not enough of us in there. At the end of it, we might as well just start Web3 customer businesses because there's a lot of investment going. And I'm not going to lie, most people don't even know what the future looks like. So you could just make it up at this point and it will still be valid. Web3 will democratize creatives, increase accountability, make us richer, disrupt, make it rain. Increase the value of asset, reduce corruption, win, democratize, make the world a fairer place. Note that you too can be. Don't know what that means. Change, make the next generation lazy. I love that comment. Can you flick back to the slides? Is that okay? Do you know why I love it? Not because I believe it, because we're on camera, so I can't say that. But it's more because of the first. 51% of Gen Zs envision doing their work on the metaverse, like it's a bit of Habbo Hotel or RuneScape. They think they're going to put their goggles on and go into the office, show up to their team meetings when they can't even turn their Zoom camera on right now, do the work and leave. 81% of those who have heard about Web3 think that it can improve its life and your life. 50% of consumers have not heard of Web3, and I think that's the fundamental point even here. Is we're creating products, we're using innovation, we're building on tech that most people don't know about, and yet it seems like we should know about it so we don't lose out. And 4 times all funds go to male founding teams, so yes, they will make the crypto dudes richer, but they can also make us all rich. And so that leads me on to the next bit, is how are decisions currently made? And so if you have an organization, Web3 or not, I really encourage you to take a snapshot of this and take it to your teams and think about what you're building and why. And this is a wider conversation, right? what are the decisions being made? Who decides the functionality? How do we improve and validate? Whose problems are we solving? When do we ask for input? What's our end goal? And why will someone care? What I didn't want to make this session about was a deep dive into Web3. What I did want to consider is, if Web3 is here, or it's coming, if Web3 is making us richer and solving problems, if Web3 is providing accessibility and innovation, if Web3 is the next generation of the internet, then why are we not all having a say in what that looks like? Because otherwise, something will be created for us that doesn't serve us, and we'll still be left behind. And we're in a nation that has access to information, to Wi-Fi, to education, to the internet, just to start with. There's plenty of people that don't. And that's what, and we're going to start to wrap up now, I promise, the intersectionality piece comes in. So intersectionality really simply is when your power and privilege collides, it both benefits you and it also causes challenges. So in simple terms, you have many layers, you're like an onion, and you have to peel them, but every layer causes a little bit more of an issue than layer before. I am here standing as a confident, cisgendered brown woman who came to the UK when she was 4, went to a working class, grew up in a working class environment, eldest of 4, went to a really good university, really earned my privilege, because when you have that university stamped in your CV, apparently you come from privilege all of a sudden, went into the world of tech, got let go from work, started her business, and is now able to be here. You have earned privilege and you have privilege that you're born into. I'm now in a position where through my privilege and through my power and through my understanding, I can go into the world of tech and I can say, these are the solutions we're building because these are the problems we're solving. How are you thinking about where you are, but also how are you making sure that the relevant people are in the room for the businesses you're building yourself or you want to build, for the companies you're working for or you would like to work for, and for the work that you're doing? Going back to that, point about digital banking. If they're not communicating to each other, there's a large group of people who don't have access to the internet, who don't speak English as a first language, or used to go to their high street banks because they were lonely, because they wanted first-hand care, that now aren't being served. Are we in spaces where we're really creating good? And are we in spaces that we're taking into consideration that 4 times more funding goes to the crypto dudes and they're going to get rich? That 51% of Gen Z, the new generation of talent, the talent that's actually going to be the future leaders of the world, think that they're going to be in the metaverse in 2 years. And if that's true, how are we going to make sure it's accessible? How are we going to make sure it's inclusive? As someone who has ADHD and chronic migraines, I can't put on VR and AR goggles, and nor do I want to be in a landscape. And so, of course, we're digressing from one to the other, but there's another use case. So obviously, these are all technologies that are built on top of the blockchain that already exists. There's some use cases in Japan where people who have bereavement are seeing their loved ones come back alive in the metaverse, believing it's real, and that's their future. I'll let you think if that's reality you want or reality you don't want, but ultimately, there are things happening outside of our scope that we should be aware of, because we should be in a position where if Web3 is going to decentralize and democratize the conditions, the answers, and who owns the stuff, then we should be taking ownership. And as I start to wrap up, one thing that I really want to touch on is the reason why I even have spaces like this is because I'm not afraid of using my voice and being here. But what customers want is trust, authenticity, and connection. How are you using your voices, your spaces, your education in building those conditions? There's a couple of cool things that are happening that maybe you should be aware of. In Dubai, they've just set up a new regulation fund for investment in these spaces. There is a value proposition, and we've spoken about the accessibility, inclusion, innovation, technology, decentralizing decisions and being backed where your ownership, but there's a problem around education. And that leads me on to yourselves. One thing that I really wanted to touch on before I start to wrap up is there are 100 and something people in this room. How are you making sure that what you know is being heard? I am only here today because of social media, because of connectivity, and because of the digital world. I didn't have anything until 2020. But I was very serious about jumping online and using my voice to share what I know. But remember, I said to you, there are less than 90 TED Talks in the Web3 space alone. There are only a handful of TED Talks by diverse individuals, and we're all diverse here, by the way, who talk about different topic and subject matters. You don't have to jump on stage, but you do have to think about how do you put yourself out there as a business person, as a potential business person, as someone who's interested in Web3, as someone who is working for corporate and wants to level up, or just as a human. A lot of these images on the screen is press that I've spoken up for, or spaces that I've been in, or places that I've been. And even here, I've been invited back, but 2 years ago I did a keynote here, which was amazing. And now to be back is even more amazing, actually. But ultimately, it's how are you making sure that you are seen as that thought leader after you've done the work? And so one of the last things that I want to leave with you is, what's your story? And you can understand how we've gone from the Web3 and the future of tech and the future of the world, but also how are you making sure that you're positioned as the best player you can in that space? How are you making sure that you are owning your narrative? Because ultimately that's the systems we're building around us, and you are owning the conversation and you're telling your story that's relevant to yourselves, so that the data could be diversified and clean and accessible, so that the end output actually serves you as a customer. There is a link to this, I promise. It's not just a bunch of slides. And so in really simple terms, the pink is who you are or you want to be. The red or the coral on the side is what's going on in the world that you're interested by and that you feel like you have relevancy to. And the middle, with all due respect, is if you could only use 5 umbrella terms, 5 hashtags, or 5 values that are guiding you in the next 12 months, they would be that. I am here because I only talk about these 5 things in different verticals. But that means that I also am aware of my customer, my problem, my solution, who's building with me, why they're building, and what we're solving. We're very clear about that. How we choose to execute is another way of doing it. When we use the word democratizing access to mentorship, career conversations, and networking, it's not buzzwords that we've created. It's the fact that we don't own any of these spaces. And yet we're very open to giving our data away, giving our information away, giving ourselves away. And we're not even getting rich at the back of it. We're not even getting income. We're not even feeling fulfilled. And so if you think about ways in which you can support the future, become the future, or sit in spaces which really serve you, I think I'll leave you with this. And the reason why I've done it this way is, yes, to give you a brief overview, but because we want to deep dive into the panel, and that's where the real questions will be answered, right? But this is the general overview of where we've come from, where we are, what the future looks like, and how important it is for you to get involved in that space, and how you should be sharing your story outwardly, be that shouting at stages, or just being in a position where you're talking to one another and networking, so that we can make sure that the output of tomorrow actually serves the talent of today. So ultimately, mentorship, investing, sharing, policy, and networking are key. I'm not going to keep you any longer because I appreciate that you do have a panel that you do want to talk to. And I also appreciate that I had less than 24 hours to come on this stage, and hopefully I've been able to lift your energy up, give you one thing that you've learned from, and just make you feel motivated to take ownership of the next step of technology. And that's ultimately what I want to leave you with, is we have a say in what happens next. We just have to make sure that we're not afraid to speak up about what good looks like in different ways, shapes, and forms. So on that note, I'm going to thank you for listening and for showing up, and for still showing up when your speaker got cancelled last night. I appreciate that so much. And I think we might have a break before the panel comes in, right? So thank you.
Massive, massive round of applause and thanks to Sonia. And despite being probably less prepared than me, didn't hand me back a sweaty mic like I'm conscious that I did to other people, so less nervous and more confident. Well done. We're going to take 5 minutes, and when we come back, before we go into the panel, we are going to have what I'm calling, for no better words, is 10 under 10. So I want to give the platform back to you. We're going to hear from 10 people. You've each got under 1 minute to share either something you're working on, something you'd like to share, or someone you'd like to speak to. So then for after the panel, if you want to stick around till the end, we've got until 10 o'clock. Hopefully it gives a little bit of intentionality and focus behind your networking and catching up at the end of the evening. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of prior warning. That actually wasn't a deliberate pun, but I am Grace Pryor. Giving a prior warning, have a think about your 1 minute. So that's something you're working on, something you'd like to share, or someone you want to speak to. Be back here in 5 minutes. Okay. How are we all doing? Are we feeling pitch ready? I don't know how this is going to work because I don't know if I'll be able to keep count, and I've got my stopwatch, but maybe someone else can help me count. Okay, we back on. We all ready? We've got Maureen ready with a microphone. There we go. Okay. 10 people, 1 minute each. I've got a stopwatch, so a timer may or may not go off, but I will tell you when you're up to a minute. Who wants to go first? We've got Jeremy. Go for it. Maureen, go to Jeremy. Come on, 1 minute. No waffling. No waffles.
Hi guys, you probably don't know who I am. I'm Jeremy, I'm from Data Cove. I've got a minute, I've got to talk really quickly. We are running with Silicon Brighton, Grace and Maureen and all of the other wonderful people, a massive tech conference that used to run in London, and we are bringing it to Brighton in September. So this is for R coders, Python coders, and people that are interested. We are looking for speakers, attendees, sponsors. Come and talk to me afterwards. Visit the Data Cove website and we will tell you about all things Earl, how you can tell us about your applications of the R and Python programming language. There you go. I'm probably within a minute, aren't I?
Amazing. That was 40 seconds. Let's go on to the next person. Let's pass it back to Peppy because our friend put her forward before the break. Go, Peppy, you're up.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. I wrote a book with a very aggressive title, but bear with me, I'm going to own it. You lost your job, now what? Surviving the AI shift. It's like a guide. It guides you from the loss of losing your job to going to success with the help of ChatGPT as a co-pilot. So I teach you how to prompt. You will use this to get your CV ready for the ATS, update your cover letters, and prep for interviews with humans and non-humans. And if you have questions, please come talk to me. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Peppy. Up at the back, we've got Richard right here, and then we'll go to Adam next.
Hello, I'll be very quick. I'm doing an experimental citywide kind of newsletter called the Brighton Connective. That's without an E, Brighton Connective. And it showcases all the weird, strange, collaborative, positive things that are happening across the city in business, tech, community, charity, arts, etc. Subscribe to it. It's free, and send me your news.
20 seconds. Well done, Richard. To the back to Adam, I think. We need some more hands on the side as well.
I'll try and beat 20 seconds. I'm Adam Newman, and I run a community in Brighton called Green Software Brighton with Silicon Brighton. And yeah, we're looking into the environmental impact of all of the stuff that all of us are working on, software, hardware, digital products. So if you're interested in that conversation, come and yeah, have a chat with me and engage. So, yep.
Thanks, Adam. Who's up next? Yeah, go for it to Mark at the front.
Yes. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Mark, co-founder of Joyfully Different. We are a business community and learning hub helping neurodivergent founders show up authentically in business with practical support and a community support system. We're looking for potential collaborators to explore the experiences of tech neurodivergent founders and, to be a little cheeky, sponsors as well. If anyone's interested in either, I'm around. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got 5 left. Just a flag, we have all men with their hands up. I will pass over to another man, but I would like to encourage a few ladies. Yeah, we've got someone with a mic there. Lovely.
I don't have a business. I just got myself on my intellect. So my name is Ashi. You say Ashit without a D, or Ashi when you sneeze. So I'm sure all of you have said my name at least once in your life. So I am an international business undergraduate student, and if you want someone to squeeze your creative juices, I'm here. I'm also a model. If you want a brown face for your business, you know who to hit up. That's it.
Love that. 4 more. America.
Hi everyone, I'm Chukwemeka Nodum. I just recently graduated from my Master's Management of Information Technology in the University of Sussex. This is just a pitch to introduce myself. I'm working towards being a UI UX designer and then a product designer. So if you have any job for me, just let me know.
Thank you. 3 more. We'll go to Michelle at the front.
Hi everyone, my name's Michelle Flynn and I run a health coaching business. We can't separate work and home anymore. We have to accept that they are linked. Health is everything, how you manage your time, your money, your relationships. I work a lot with companies in London and I'd really like to work with some companies local because I'm fed up of the commute and I really like to work with people in person. So if you've got a company or you're an individual and you're looking for some help to basically be better, give me a shout.
Amazing. 2 more. Marcus.
Hi there, I'm Stuart McSkimming. I have worked in a few large charities running their technology. I'm really concerned that large charities are just simply behind with their adoption of AI technologies and they're not actually going to be doing some of the things they could be doing for their beneficiaries and the people they're trying to help. So I've now gone independent and I'm trying to marry up AI solutions with large charities who I've got lots of connections with. So if anyone wants to talk to me about that, I'd welcome it.
1 more. There we go. Sorry.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Uttara. And like some of my friends here, yes, I have done just my 2nd master's because I love studying. I've been a journalist and I am completely fascinated with technology, but I do not know how storytelling happens authentically without AI or ChatGPT for that matter. And I'm here if anyone would like to give me anything to do because I just lost my job 2 weeks ago, honestly. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
That's everything. Go on. Make it 30 seconds and then you can have the last slot, Marcus.
Thank you very much. Going back to health, we all like time off work, right? Yeah. We've just completed a study on the 4-day week. Lo and behold, it's really good for productivity and really good for health. If anybody is interested in the 4-day week, we are currently looking for businesses to work with. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you,
and that's the
everyone.
University of Sussex again.
There we go. Thank you. And now I'm going to hand over to Maria, who is our panel chair this evening, for an absolutely epic panel discussion. Over to you.
Thank you, Grace. So the expectations are really high, so bear with me because this event means a lot to me. And as one of the co-sponsors, there would be no event without some proper merchandising, isn't it? Who agrees with me? Oh, finally, good. So to win these wonderful and amazing pens from the University of Sussex, I will ask you 5 very different questions and very difficult, okay? So how many of you searched on LinkedIn one of the panelists? 1 point, take note of it. Second question, how many of you get upset when speaking over the phone with potentially a bot that is telling you, I don't understand you, agent, agent, agent? Good. So how many points? 2 points? Good. Top score, 2 points. Third question, how many of you invested in one of the dodgy cryptocurrencies? 3 points top score. Now we are getting close to the prize. How many of you have never collected one of those other dodgy things that are called non-fungible tokens? Let's go to the have. How many of you have collected one of those dodgy crypto kitties, crypto punks, you name it, we got it? How many 4s? Who? Then you will come and collect the prize. And now bonus point. How many of you have heard about ordinals? Oh, fantastic. So if you got 4 or more, I think, Irina, you are number 5 at the moment. At the end, come and collect one of those lovely pens, courtesy of our sponsors. But the reason why I asked you this is that also from the word cloud, what we notice is that some of you might be familiar with Web3, others, maybe this is the first time and say, what the heck, what is Web3? And the reasons why we're here with this amazing panel is to try to give you a flavor of what it is for those who are not familiar with. And for those who know, bear with us, because it would be nice to level the playing field before we can enter the conversation after the lovely session we had with Sonia. So in order to start, as I have an amazing panel here, I would like to ask you to give a brief introduction of who you are and what brought you into Web3. And shall I start? Ladies first, sorry. So my name is Maria Restuccia. I am a lecturer at the business school at Sussex. And back in 2020, over the summer day, my husband started telling me, Maria, you should look into NFTs. And I was like, what? NFTs? And it was, for those of you who know it or don't know it, it's a non-fungible token. It's one of the words that comes up and up again when we talk about Web3. And I started looking at it because I was interested in the artists. And I started seeing artists that were selling NFTs, making a lot of money, famous, non-famous one, even kids raising money to pay the mortgage for their parents. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. And at the same time, I noticed that whenever I was mentioning NFTs to one of my colleagues or one of my friends or one of the people that I met in co-working space, the reaction that I got was Marmite style. So it was either hate it or love it. So as an academic, I could not dig deeper into this because I was curious. Why people are so passionate about this? So I applied for a grant, and If We Are Here is also courtesy of the British Academy, who decided to fund this research that is at the moment reaching its end. And I heard from lots of interesting artists that told me about their experience with NFTs. So I will not spoil anymore, and I will pass it over to Milo, who is here, and is a partner with Brighton.
Yes, I'm Milo Bowman. I run Brighton Blockchain, which is a community of people in Brighton who are interested in blockchain. If you are one of those people, please do come along. We have regular events and we'll be happy to have you. I live and breathe Web3. It's everything I do, really, for many years now. I help people and brands and businesses just understand Web3. I think that's the main thing, but also things like accepting cryptocurrency payments and making NFTs and all that kind of stuff. And as for the Marmite style camp, I definitely do love Web3. And I'm proud to say that. I think there are definitely a lot of things that are less than perfect. I mean, there are a lot of scams in Web3. If you get into the world of cryptocurrency and NFTs, it's teeming with scams. There's also a culture of financial speculation, which I think is actually quite damaging. In my experience, most people who buy crypto or want to sort of speculate on it, they either lose money or they drastically underperform the general market. There are loads of problems, but my perspective is that I think this is a new technology. Like all new technologies have some problems. When electricity was invented, they also invented electric shocks, and lots of people died from playing around with electricity, right? Cars used to be really dangerous, but then we invented things like airbags and seatbelts and crumple zones and driving licenses and traffic lights. And so we can shape these new technologies into a positive direction. And it may start out being like a bit of a Wild West, but over time, with a lot of work and effort, I think we can move it in a positive direction. And that was actually one of the reasons why I started Brighton Blockchain, because one of the negative side effects of the internet I found was that we were just spending so much more time in front of a computer screen and so much less time in real life, talking to real people and connecting with people. And that was really negative and missing. I think we need to work to shape the technologies into the ways that they can be. But that is why I'm proud to say that I love Web3, because I do think that it will be shaped in a positive direction. And fundamentally, it is a new innovation. It's not going away. It's not going to be uninvented. And that's what makes me excited about it.
Thanks, Milo. So over to Sonia.
It's interesting because I don't think I actually answered this when I did my speech earlier. So as an introduction, I'm an entrepreneur, author, presenter, and content creator. And the reason I can be all of those things is because we're hyper connected. But for me, it's because I think we'd slightly be silly not to know that something else is coming, and how do we get not only in front of it, but how do we help create whatever the next phase is? I remember doing a dissertation, I remember doing a module in 2014 when I was at university on the Internet of Things. And my lecturer, who is now the associate dean of the university, is like this weird and wacky and wonderful man. And I was like, I loved his way of lecturing, but most people didn't. But it's because he had quite a futuristic outlook. And I remember one of our modules was to go to a virtual office in Mayfair. And that's the first time I saw a virtual office. And I was like, what is this? Like, no one's here. No one works from here. And yet a phone rings and someone picks it up and then it goes somewhere else. And like, so what's the premise of it? And it blew my mind. And now 10 years later, that's literally the life that we live, is we have virtual offices, remote working and co-working. And, you know, we can kind of say anything from anywhere. And I think one of my biggest regrets in the nicest way is that when I was younger, when new mobile phones came, I was really excited. I was really they were intellectually driving me. I was like so concerned with what you can do, what you can't do, and be ahead of the game. And then somewhere along that line, I kind of lost it because you get so distracted with things. And one of my biggest regrets is probably not jumping on technology when it first started, just so that not only can you understand it, but you can intellectually invigorate your mind, because there's something unknown out there. And the universe is very much, you know, in this magical space that you can create anything that you ultimately dream. And that is what I feel like with Web3. There is no way that we can't have a Web3 if we've got a 1 and 2, right? Like the world, there's just no way that it can't exist. However, I would say we don't know what that is exactly. And so that's the cool thing, is that we can kind of create this thing that doesn't really exist, but on our own terms and our own timings. And I think that's really what I enjoy, is if we're already going to be spending all our time online and using the internet, we might as well be a part of that change.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to break the stigma against Web3 and blockchain. My name is Cornell Card, but before I dive into what I do, I'd like to give credit where it's due. Lavinia, who unfortunately can't make it here tonight, she's started Women in Blockchain Talks. And going back to your point, Sonia, earlier regarding women, and someone saying that crypto dudes are the only people who are going to get rich. Women in Blockchain Talks is actually over 6,000 women part of the group, which are all involved in cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and more importantly, Web3. So there's a lot of space for women to get involved, and women are leading the charge in a lot of their areas, especially creative ones. So anyway, back to me. What I do is I run a company called WeConnect. It's a recruitment agency, but we also provide investment, software development, events. We've actually partnered up with Solana. So whoever knows a little bit about blockchain, we've partnered up with Solana last week. We've got Hackathon happening right now in London. So if anyone wishes to find out a little bit more, please come up to me. I'll share the links with you. It's free. It's a networking space. You can be there 24/7, bring a sleeping bag. It's great. So back to what we do, and actually I'll start from the beginning. My background is actually in tech and AI. So I used to work in AI. I was in Taiwan for a year working for one of the largest semiconductor companies in the world, which sold up a chunk of the business because they realized how much potential there is in AI. So we were developing smart driving vehicles, self-driving vehicles, smart cameras, and that was on a corporate level. So it was super boring, not exciting. It was before all the hype came around, before ChatGPT. And there was a talk by a gentleman called Yann LeCun. Whoever here is in AI, they've probably heard of Yann LeCun. He's got almost 1 million followers on LinkedIn. And he spoke about the potential downfalls of AI, but how it was also going to be integrated with this thing called Web3. And it got me thinking, what is Web3? What is blockchain? The more I researched, the more I found out the possibilities surrounding it. I'm a very pragmatic and practical person. So I started looking at the useful cases of Web3. And trust me, there's a ton. It's changing a lot of industries. Having worked now with companies like, for example, KPMG, Deloitte, we know what's happening behind the scenes, who's hiring the different researchers for this type of technology. And it will dramatically, I wouldn't want to say disrupt, transform is a better word. practically all industries, from logistics to healthcare, all the way through to data ownership. And for anyone who has any specific questions, I'd love to break them down for you and tell you how you can apply it in different businesses, in different areas, and so on and so forth. But if just to wrap it up really quickly, history. People have never had access to the amount of information that they do today because of the internet. When the internet first came out, we had the dot-com bubble. I'm sure most people here remember that. There was a ton of companies which actually didn't provide any value, but they were just trying to jump in. This is kind of like what the Web3 space is right now. There's a ton of companies which are not providing value, but amongst all that dirt, there are true gems which are building phenomenal applications. And it's amazing to be at the intersection of being able to support some of those companies which are changing, for example, healthcare and democratizing people's, well, patients' data, enabling people to have ownership and sell your own data rather than have other companies sell it for you behind closed doors. So the internet was built on the old approach that is being transformed through Web3, and that is through ownership of your things. So there's a couple companies that own the internet, Google, Microsoft, you name it. Within Web3, it's all about the people. So it's about empowerment, and all of you can be a part of it. That's the best part, and you can be rewarded. Anyway, without getting too technical, back to you.
Oh, absolutely. No, thanks, Cornel. So one of the questions that Sonia asked you is, what is Web3 for you? Web3 is. I just took the time before coming today to look at some of the headlines that had been somehow connected to Web3. And at first I saw something connected to NFTs from The Guardian back in 2021, shaking up the art world. That was the promise. Then we started doubting, are they really art NFTs? Then the great rush might be over, but are they in decline? And just as of today, the words that came out were worthless, dead, meant to change everything, but nothing changed really. So as you can see from here, and also from your word cloud, there is a lot of debate around it. So we heard from the public, we saw some of the headlines. Now I would like to ask each one of you, if you had to say in one word what Web3 is for you and why, just to bring in our perspectives on the topic that we've been looking at. So Sonia?
The next phase, just the next phase of life, the next phase of innovation, the next phase of where we're heading. I just think it's the next phase. And if you go back to history, you've seen these phases before. And I think we just need to be in a position where we are conscious that it's happening and conscious of what that means for what we as people are putting into the world and therefore giving away. And it's really interesting. I just want to raise a point. You said something about healthcare. It made me laugh because, and you all should try this actually tomorrow, is if you go to the doctors, you're like, hey, can I have my records? It's going to be really hard for you to get it. They don't just give away your records, even though that's your data. And it just made me think what you said. And it's like, the next phase is, if I've given you something, I should be able to take it back. Or if I have something, it should be mine to begin with. Why is it that you know more about me than I know about myself? And that's what I think it is.
One word, unity. So unity, going back to the point of, well, history. History has made repetitive mistakes over and over again, and they were written down in history books, but they're only accessible to a very few who are educated. Internet has changed everything. People all around the globe can see what our governments are doing, what the corporations are doing, and what the previously more educated people have been privileged to be able to access or do with that information. So now the power has gone back slightly to the people. People are questioning everything around them a lot more. What are the corporations doing? There's a lot of like corporation, what's the word? Like sentience almost, like everyone's questioning everything, and we can easily find out information on the internet. However, the internet is still owned by the very few. So the Web3 is a movement. It's a transition built by the people who are completely just and utterly fed up of the olden approach towards how business is done, how corporations are managed, how people are mistreated. And although there's protests happening around the world for many different causes, nothing's been done about it really. Web3 is a step forward. It's about democratizing voting power. It's about democratizing data and ownership of your own data. I'm a gamer. Who's a gamer here? Raise your hands. We've got a couple people. Not that many, as many as I thought. Anyway, within games, you put a lot of time and effort in. Actually, all right, who here has a bank account? Thank you. That'll be a better case study. So with banks, there's actually been many banks that have failed. 2008 financial crisis, boom, I'm sure it affected plenty of you. Recently in America, SVB, along with a couple of other banks, have also liquidated. Their clients are still due money, and there's a lot of issues surrounding that. Why should we trust an entity which mismanages our either data or personal assets, such as money? If we do a bank run right now, not all of us will be able to get our money out, and that's a fact. So Web3 is actually the opposite of that. A blockchain is a distributed ledger which allows everyone to see all the data on there, and also how much currency is in reserves, how much is available. So it's fully accessible, so that there is no one left out. That's just an example that I'm making here. Also, digital ownership when it comes to gaming. There were a couple people who raised their hands, so I'll go back to it. I played a lot of games. I put countless amount of hours towards games that I'm not going to be able to get any value out of from, besides memories with my friends and so forth. Today, I can't convert that into financial ownership. So I can't sell it. I can't do anything with it. And a lot of games go out of trend anyway. Whereas within the Web3 space, everything, or at least they're trying to make it interconnected. So if you play a game for however many hours and you get all these points and you get all these skins and armor and whatever, and then you grow up, eventually get a house, mortgage, kids, and you're fed up with gaming, you don't have the time for it. So what do you do with all that? Well, guess what? You can pass it on to another person. You can sell it. And this goes to other areas as well, such as, for example, healthcare. If you're trying to do good and you know that you've been in a position whereby your data can impact someone else's life on a positive level, then you can sell it back to people who can do well with that data, rather than it being sold to marketers, which can then market drugs to you. So yeah, see, that's just a couple of examples. But anyway, I could go on.
So the marketers are, let's look at it. And Milo?
In one word, I would say composability. I think the ethos behind having web protocols become decentralized, you might ask, what's the value of decentralization? Of course, we've spoken about a lot of that. One of the major benefits of decentralizing web protocols is that they become composable. That means that you can build on top of them, you can build with them, you can use them, they can be interoperable in many different ways. An example of why that's valuable is a company called Zynga back in 2011 built a game called Farmville, which was, in its day, the most successful game in the world. There are about 100 million users of Farmville. And they decided to build it on top of Facebook. They used Facebook's whole system and used Facebook's users to go into Farmville, and it was kind of built on Facebook. And it got so big that at one point, I think it made up 10% of Facebook's annual revenue was Farmville. Facebook decided, oh, hey, this is actually really valuable to us. We can just change the rules and do whatever we want. So the idea of having decentralized web protocols is that if you can have a say in this, you can own the protocols, you can govern the protocols yourself. And if they are decentralized, so if they are kind of user-owned and operated, That means that there isn't someone who can change the rules at any time. So you can have the assurances and the trust. If it's built on blockchain, you can trust the rules. You can trust the way that it's going to operate over time. You can then build an entire business, an entire life on top of a web protocol or using web protocols. And also they can be interoperable between them. So you can build your version of Twitter. Maybe you can use Twitter's posts, if it was decentralized, you could use those posts with some videos from TikTok, and you could have all these different elements in your app. If it was all decentralized building blocks, you can build with them. And that, I think, is the real value of Web3, is composability.
Thank you, Milo. What I would like to bring now as another topic for our conversation is the challenges, because so far it seems we look at some of the opportunities, some of the bright sides, and that's where I find also from my interviews with artists, a lot of the issues that they were experiencing was in terms of actually there are not that many people that are actually adopting Web3. There is a lot of bad press around it. We heard about the scams. We heard about the issues even in potentially setting up the interface to navigate into the new web. So what do you see as the key challenge in the adoption of Web3?
Is that me?
Yeah.
User interfaces and accessibility, and also education. There's certainly a lack of it. That's why we're very much working with an education space. So we've held talks at the House of Parliament, House of Lords in particular. We run employability workshops, as well as just different workshops with universities. So we've done them at University of Surrey, Oxford, Greenwich, hopefully Sussex soon. And we're trying to make it more accessible to people. Unfortunately, as is with all new and complex technology, it's built by engineers and developers. So part of my responsibility when I was working for the AI company back in Taiwan was to communicate between the developers and the engineers, the heavily tech-sided people, translate what they're building over into common terms so that people can understand it, just the practical aspects of the technology that they're building. And they were developing in Chinese, so it was an extra step of trying to translate that. However, there's a big gap in between. So we need more people who are kind of like socially oriented, but can also understand the tech side of things. And Web3 is getting there. It's definitely getting there. There's far more platforms, which I'm more than happy to share, which provide free education. We're one of them. So Blockchain Sensei provide education all across the UK, globally, on a corporate level, one-to-one. So we help businesses adopt new technologies, and this is all across the Web3 spectrum, including AI, IoT, robotics, 5G, etc. And we try and do one-to-ones, so employability too.
So education, you see it as one of the key challenges. Yes.
For sure. Is it not all built by engineers? Sorry, what do you mean? I'm a layman out there, but yeah. All technology is built by engineers, so they not have like where they want to go. Can you repeat the question for the online audience? Sorry, what am I repeating again?
I think because you mentioned that Web3, like blockchain, as an example, is built by engineers.
Yeah, correct.
I think that.
Oh. Of course. Oh, that's what you're saying. So sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I misunderstood what you're saying there. Yeah, no, of course. And that's totally reasonable. What the point that you're trying to make. However, you've also got the people in between. So you always do. You've got the marketers. I mean, the engineers are not responsible for getting the vision and the mission out of the tech. They're in the nitty-gritties, right? They're doing C++, JavaScript, Solidity, whatever it may be. They're not out there portraying, unless you're a founder who's potentially is also in a CTO role, but then that's slightly different, right? You got to take on you got to wear different hats. There's not that many people. So yes, you do need more people to translate the technology. And what I was trying to say earlier is blockchain Web3 is at a stage where it's starting to become more accessible outside of those silos of those heavily tech-sided people, because they were building initially the product for themselves because they understood global issues, but they didn't do a great job at user experience, user interface, interoperability between different applications. So they've got other people coming in, well, the common people, so to speak, who are just like, wait, hold on, we need to redesign what you've done, or at least build a layer on top of it so that it's more accessible.
Thanks, Cornel.
Thank you.
On that, Sonia?
I think we've kind of delved into the education part. So I'm gonna just echo everything that's been said. There is a lack of education. There's no doubt about that, right? But that comes from also a school level. That comes from, we have no idea. The people that are coming out of the system have no idea how to use it, but there's businesses being built around it. But two things that came to mind when you were speaking and when we were speaking is, I think we, unfortunately, as a society, have come to this point now where we're afraid to challenge because we're afraid of getting cancelled. And so there's the lack of curiosity that already does naturally exist. So you're in this gap where either you know or you don't know. And the people in the middle, which is most of us, are afraid of putting their hand up. That's why I use a Slido as an example, anonymously, to say something like, hey, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I kind of don't want to say that I don't know what you're talking about because it makes me look silly, because it seems like you know what you're talking about and I should know that too. And I think with the amount of information that we are being just pushed at this point, a lot of us are afraid of putting our hand up and saying, I don't get it, and I need multiple moments of trying to get it. So what is the easiest way to get it? And also, do I need to even get this, right? Because I think we're also in that space. And so there's a challenge in the cancellation education part. There's also curiosity of, we don't know what we don't know. So these are great terms that are being used interchangeably, but we don't know what the relevant questions are because we don't even know what the future might look like. And so I think there's also a mismatch between, maybe we're just not dreaming or thinking big enough. And maybe a part of us is, and we're like, hey, actually, it's already been done. Like, how can we create another Facebook? Well, actually, someone needs to go create another Facebook, not me. I'm not going to take that one on. I've got other things to do, but someone needs to do it, because we can't just have one dude running these side of things. And I think a lot of us are afraid to be big and bold and kind of take a chance on ourselves. And that's probably another challenge when it comes to the work. And the last thing probably is community. Yes, it's great that we're all here. And I think that's a really big part of it. What are we going to do afterwards? Are we going to connect with each other? Are we going to keep the conversation going? Are we going to be accountable in our actions? And so it's great that we can talk about education and the lack of fund and the fact that, you know, crypto dudes are getting rich. But I think a lot of it comes back to accountability of what are we doing to make sure things are changing, curiosity so we can ask the relevant questions, and also not being afraid of being challenged or being cancelled because you don't know what you don't know. And I just think we've got into this like really terrible loop that, with all due respect, we're having the same conversations here on a panel that you'll probably have at another event you're going, but we're covering the what and not the how, and the how really needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Yeah, for community, come to Brighton Blockchain. We're right with that. I think the key challenge is the kind of separating the casino gambling aspect of it, because as you've mentioned, and as I think we've heard tonight, a lot of people's perceptions of Web3 and crypto is this kind of financial thing, this money thing, when actually it is a technology. And it has got this reputation, it's got this culture of financial speculation. Part of the reason for that is that we have, in most major blockchains over a few years ago, we have very high transaction fees in blockchains. At one point, I minted an NFT and it cost me £100 just in fees to mint it. Now, in that environment, you can't do anything that is low value. Yeah?
Just define what minting is for people.
Oh, sorry, making an NFT. Thank you. Yes, yes. Just making an NFT. But even just transacting a cryptocurrency or swapping one cryptocurrency for another, I think I've paid about £50 in transaction fees. The only way that that's viable is if you think you're going to make enough money from that to cover the cost of the fees. The only viable applications that can exist in that environment are ones that are based around money and making money and financial speculation. And so the underlying infrastructure of blockchain has created this culture of financial speculation.
Thank you, Milo. Thank you, Sonia and Cornel. We're reaching the end of our session and of the panel session, and I had a question for you. Actually, coming from the point of, we've seen a lot of the questions about the technology. We heard about the engineers that are programming a lot of these things. And I heard from a lot of people that also from the from the Slido, that it's almost like a problem in search of a solution. So what I would like us to almost end our panel on is an idea of what are the problems that potential leaders could be looking at to solve through blockchain and through Web3 that we are not possibly thinking about. So what are the problems where this technology could help us as a tip potentially for you to live with and explore maybe tomorrow?
Should I start? Yes. I think centralized networks are the big problem. Again, with things like Twitter and Facebook, the fact that they're centralized means that there's no real competition. You can't leave Facebook. I mean, if you leave Facebook, you're just off Facebook. There is no competitor where there is also a social graph. There are people that you can add as friends, whatever. So it's kind of in or out. With decentralization and with blockchain and with Web3, you can have competition. That's one of the main advantages, really. That's it.
Great question. I don't want to digress into too many areas, but okay. Well, ownership is one. We already spoke about it. I could either dive into, I think, community. Okay, I'll focus on community instead, because I could dive into different industries, but community is a brilliant example of how Web3 is utilized. Web3, the people who are within Web3, they are strong advocates for in real life events. They love parties and they love meeting up in person. So they're tech nerds, or they stemmed from tech nerds like myself, and they ended up swapping it over into an emphasis on participation, equality, and distribution of power, wealth, of just voting rights. So they do this through community means, and a lot of the blockchains, a lot of the most, you think that, when invest into cryptocurrencies is for self-investment to just make a speculative profit, whereas in reality that money is actually turned into really good causes, and they get put in either to charity or for community purposes. There's a lot of really cool events happening
there, and I think we can share more resources. So Sonia, I think if you could wrap in 30 seconds, because
Absolutely. I'm not going to focus on the use case as much, but I'm just going to ask you a question. Who remembers having to pick your GCSE subjects? And often the GCSE subjects were something along the lines of your core subjects are maths, English, and science. And then you could pick an art, but if you pick up art, you can't do geography. And if you pick geography, you can't do business. And if you do business, you're not smart enough to do French. You know what I mean? And at this point, I'm kind of thinking, you know what? Web3 for me is the coming together of everything we kind of wanted to do as kids. We're allowed to break stuff. We're allowed to fix it. We're allowed to think big. We're being creative. We have no idea what the future holds, but we're given that chance again just to go and figure it out. And then we're rewarded for figuring something out. So me, it's kind of like, I don't want to focus on just the use cases. I think what it's doing is it's bringing on all of these skills that we've once forgotten of, we once wanted to use, and we're able to use it in a very creative way and still be logical, still be pragmatic. You can be art and you can be maths, and you can be business, and you can be sports, and you can be French, and you can be Spanish, and you can be DT, all in one go, because it's literally what we make of it. And I think if we think of Web3 like that, it's, we don't know what we don't know. So why don't we just go break a bunch of stuff and then just figure out how to build it better for ourselves? And that's kind of where I'd end it.
Thank you, because you actually allow me to finish on one note that I was thinking how to wrap it up. We are in a transition, but the future, quoting Natasha Bedingfield, and I'm giving away my age now, the rest is still unwritten. So on this note, I would like to open the floor for your questions. 3 questions. Yeah. Fantastic. So as we are talking about Web3, guess what? We have time for 3 questions. So let's try to go one set, front, middle, and back, so we have all the room represented.
Hello. So I think this is for Cornell probably. I don't have any knowledge really about the blockchain, but one of the big things for me that freaks me out a little bit is the impact on the climate. So I guess imagining a complete energy crisis, sorry, this is a bit dystopian, but what would happen if we had no access to energy? How would the blockchain work? How would we be able to access our funds?
Okay, so it's your question is not around the impact that it has on the energy crisis.
No.
Not at all. Okay, good, because that's a hoax. Yes, you're very right to point that out. But if you think about banking, well, we've moved already into digital banking as it is. I mean, if technology was to be disrupted in a way whereby internet goes down, well, everyone's fucked completely. Every single industry is gone. Forget about it. Healthcare and everything relies on computers. So not only is the blockchain and Web3 space down, everyone's down. So I think, yeah, I mean, you're totally right to point that out, but I think everyone should be concerned in general, whether you're on Web3 or not, just regarding that question in particular. If it was surrounding the energy crisis and whether it's contributing to it, it's not. And also a lot of the founders that I know, which are running the blockchains, they're very environmentally conscious. And so they actually plug in a lot of the mines over to renewable energy sources, such as dams or what's it called? The air propellers. I can't remember. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So can we go towards this side or any question from this side of the room? Over. Thanks, Maureen. And then we're going to come back to the...
I think this is probably for Milo, I'm not sure, but in terms of the way that blockchain works and looking at finance, it seems to be that centralized systems are faster and cheaper and less energy requirement. I know that sort of data mining, mining has been a way of validating the blockchain. Is there any kind of movement on that to a faster, cheaper way of validating the blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like you're mainly talking about Bitcoin when you say that, which is kind of the face of cryptocurrency. But it is also the oldest cryptocurrency, and it's also the least flexible, the one that really doesn't change at all. So yeah, it's mined with computers. Now that is very old. It is actually the only major blockchain that uses energy to work, basically. So all other blockchains don't use energy like that, or basically they don't use energy at all, apart from being online. It's slow and expensive. Well, actually, it's not that slow compared to most financial systems, given that they take about 3 days to settle fully on international transactions and all that kind of thing. But yeah, I guess it's a bit slow. But again, most other blockchains, I mean, Ethereum has blocks every 12 seconds, but you can also have pre-confirmations that are within milliseconds. So no, it's instant. And expensive, yes. Again, fees were very high. They're not high now. And going forward, I mean, the big scaling problem is in the fees, and that is being solved everywhere in every blockchain. And yeah, it's the big bottleneck, but it's in the same way like the early internet was very slow, and you couldn't have images or videos. It just wasn't feasible. You just have text. But then it got faster because those problems were solved and it scaled. That's the same thing with fees. So yes.
So time for our last question. Over here. Maybe it's faster for me.
Sorry, this one kind of stems from curiosity. So I have a somewhat uncommon skin disease, and so when I go to the doctor for healthcare, because you're 48% more likely with HS to have lupus and stuff, they collect my data. I can't really, since I've done it in the US, I can't really opt out of it. So what can you say with We3? How would that be relatable so I could have ownership of my data? Not to compare it to Henrietta Lacks, but I don't have support if they find some upcoming thing and it's privatized and made money. Is there a possibility that I could have ownership of something like that?
I live, breathe blockchain. Yes, full ownership. So the technology is built in a way whereby we've never seen anything like it, to be honest with you. I've looked into the tech. It is there. It works somehow. However, so let's take ourselves back to caveman times when people transacted based on goods. Before banks were ever a thing, before any intermediaries ever existed, and people relied on trust to one another. I give you 2 cows in exchange for that amount of corn. So that's how a blockchain essentially works. So to break it down into layman terms, you transact peer-to-peer, and the algorithms prove that. So any kind of information that you would essentially validate, for example, so one of the healthcare companies that we work with, it would be transacted through you as an individual and put onto, let's say, a smart contract, which would only enable you to have full ownership of that data and accessibility as well. So you can either share it with your doctor or doctors or the hospital or some sort of other organization, depending on how you want to distribute your own data. And it would be only accessible to those which would have, well, the keys to it. So yeah, and that goes to, yeah, there's more questions.
One more.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that we have a lot of questions.
I can answer it quickly.
Well,
oh, sorry.
Can I just say that I think what is evident also from the question is that we want potentially to continue this and to keep discussing. So what I would like to say is that there is also a Web3 enabled way to do this and to allow you to potentially, if you have never done anything in Web3, we created an opportunity to mint what is called the proof of attendance protocol, which is a basic badge on Web3 that shows that tonight you've been here and we can keep being connected as a community. So we can leave this as, we can continue the conversation after the panel and—
It's more of a remark, it's not a question.
Yes.
Just kind of, I think I kind of cornered Sonia a little bit. I'm a passionate environmentalist and I volunteer a lot for the community and I also stand for culture. I am a little bit upset when people talk about the blockchain's impact on the environment while they have utilized the traditional banking system and how they do so since they're about 12. The current traditional financial systems, they utilize an enormous amount of carbon, they have an enormous carbon footprint, and I'd like us to start challenging those individuals and not actually blockchain and cryptocurrencies, because they tend to be far more environment friendly, and farmers who build cryptocurrencies actually rely on renewable energy, and they are far more environmentally minded. And when we're talking about paying the fees for elevated gas prices and all those things, it's because those farmers, those individuals actually work on offsetting their climate impact, whereas big financial institutions that we all bank with globally do not. So we need to really not think of blockchain as something that is actually negative on our environment, but we need to look at the context. That's all I wanted to say.
And on this, I think we can then work with our next meetup on the green software. So thank you a lot for coming. It has been an absolute pleasure to be here. And if you want to continue the conversation, please join us the panel, and a big thanks to all of the panelists and for you to stay.
So that is absolutely everything. We do have the space till 10 and the bar is still open and there are few canapes left on the table. I think the panel's sticking around. It's clearly a lively Marmite subject. So carry on the conversation with yourselves and with the panel. One more announcement. I'll save the date for the next meetup or the next Leaders event. It's Thursday, the 2nd of May, and it's going to be in partnership with Brighton Fringe. So we've got a keynote, but also just a very fun camp Fringe performance as well. So it's going to be a bit of fun to celebrate the start of the month of Brighton Fringe. But let's leave it there. Can we give one more round of applause to Sonia, to Maria, to Cornell, and to Milo? And happy Easter. That's it.
Nice one, mate. Nice one. That's brilliant. Very. Thank you. Nice one. You happy? Yeah.